Hey guys, welcome back to another CXC revision session. I'm your host, MISSBIOCHEM. So today we'll be reviewing the May June 2017 CXC HSB past paper. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Also turn on your notifications so you know whenever we post a video. So let us begin. Question 1. The process by which living organisms get energy from their food is called, so we have A, nutrition, B, respiration, C, excretion, D, growth. So this is a really easy one. So we should all know that the answer is respiration, because respiration is the process by which oxygen is used to break down glucose to give us energy. So it's not nutrition. I know some of us may think it should have been nutrition, but nutrition deals with how we utilize the food. So the food that was ingested, all of that, how it is used to support life, doesn't have anything to do with energy. So excretion now would have been the removal of metabolic waste. And then growth, we all know, is just an increase in size. So it's the process of increasing in size or maybe length. So the answer has to be respiration, because respiration now, the end product of respiration is energy. So because of respiration now, we can get energy. And that is how we get energy. So after we get the nutrition or the food, that glucose that was broken down now, it gets converted to energy with the help of oxygen. So moving on to question 2. Which of the following is not a function of the cell membrane? So we have A, helps support a fluid-filled cell. B, keeps the cell contents in correct proportion. C, controls the passage of substances into and out of the cell. D, allows the passage of substances through the cytoplasm. So now the answer has to be D. So D is definitely not a function. So all of this, so the cell membrane is going to support the fluid-filled cell. So remember, the cell membrane, if we look over here, would be just this external layer supporting the contents in the cell. And then B, it keeps the cell contents in the correct proportion. It does that. And then C, controls the passage of substances. Everybody know that the cell membrane is semi-permeable. Being semi-permeable means that it's going to allow substances to pass in and out of the cell. So C is definitely in it. So the only one that the cell membrane won't have any control of is the passage of substances in the cytoplasm. Remember, the cytoplasm is the jelly-like part of the cell. So the cell membrane is just the outer layer. It has no control of whatever substances pass through the cytoplasm. So remember, chemical reactions can happen in the cytoplasm, and it has nothing to do with what have entered the cell prior to that chemical reaction happening. So the cell membrane doesn't control whatever is passing in the cytoplasm. Remember, the cytoplasm is the fluid, the jelly-like area. So the cell membrane has no control of whatever is passing through there. But whatever needs to enter and leave the cell now, definitely that has to deal with the cell membrane. Question 3. During osmosis, the movement of water molecules through the semi-permeable membrane continues until, so we have A, the amount of water molecule is equalized on both sides. B, the hydrostatic pressure equals the osmotic pressure. C, the osmotic pressure equals the osmotic potential. D, turgidity and flaccidity are equal. So now I think everybody should know that osmosis is the movement of water molecules from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration until it is evenly distributed. Or it is the movement of water molecules from a dilute solution to a concentrated solution. So osmosis now will continue until A, the amount of water molecule is equalized on both sides, because we said in the first definition, it will happen until it is evenly distributed. So that's why the molecules have to be, the amount of water molecules here have to be equalized on both sides. All right, so we're on to 4. So items 4 refers to the following diagram, which show a red blood cell before and after being placed in a concentrated salt solution for 1 hour. So the question, the change in the red blood cells shown in 2 occurs because water, so we have A, enters the cell by osmosis, B, leaves the cell by osmosis, C, leaves the cell by diffusion, D, enters the cell by diffusion. So the first thing, because they're talking about water being moved, then diffusion is out of it. So C and D is out of it because water is moving. The next thing we have to decide, is it going to be water enter the cell by osmosis or water leaves the cell by osmosis? So we have to look at the diagram. In the first diagram, we have a regular blood cell. Then in the second one, you realize that the blood cell looks smaller, right? We can see that the cell membrane right here, the shape changed and it's closer. So there is not a lot of space that was there before, so it's closer. So now the cell membrane, as we can see, we could have said it shrunk, it got smaller. And if this diagram is looking smaller after 1 hour, then guess what? Water is gonna leave this red blood cell or this red blood cell here, and then it's gonna result in this because water is leaving it. So the answer has to be B, water leaves. All right. Question 5. Item 5 refers to the following aquatic food chain. So we have phytoplankton, zooplankton, fish, and water bird. So the question, the producers in this food chain is so the producers, so remember the producers normally start a food chain. Them always start the food chain. So if we know that this is the start of the food chain, then the phytoplankton would be the producers. And producers are mostly plants, but sometimes we can have some bacteria like the algae and the phytoplankton being producers because they can photosynthesize. So once they're able to photosynthesize, then they can be a producer. So the phytoplankton is definitely our answer. Question 6. Which of the following foods would best prevent constipation? So remember, constipation occurs when the bowel movement becomes less frequent and stools become difficult to pass. So now, should we have some chicken soup, which is A? So we have B, vegetable, rice, and fish. Then C, fruits and vegetable salad. And then D, white bread and cheese. So if it is constipation that we're having, we have to have some food that has fibers. So is it that the chicken soup is going to contain a lot of fiber or a lot of roughage? No, so that's out of it. Is it that the vegetable, rice, and fish is going to contain a lot of rice and a lot of roughage? Well, we have some vegetable in the rice, but we have a better option. So fruits and vegetable salad would be the best option to help prevent constipation. So we have wheat bread. Wheat bread is okay, wheat bread can help, but the cheese wouldn't be another good option. So the cheese won't help to prevent the constipation. So the best option here would have been fruits and vegetable salad. So remember in the fruits, if you can think about like the oranges, we have some roughage in there. And then for the vegetable salads, our broccoli, some of those other green vegetables, they contain roughage or fiber, so they're good. If we think about corn, all of those stuff, they'll come under the roughage. All right, moving on. Question 7. Which of the following reagents give a positive test for the main food present in a slice of baked potato? So we have A, burette, B, ethanol, C, iodine solution, D, Benedict solution. So the burette test is used to test for protein, so that's out of it because we're talking about a baked potato. A baked potato is a carbohydrate, so it contains starch. So ethanol is used to test for fats and oil, so that's out of it. C, iodine solution. Iodine solution is used to test for starch. So it's definitely iodine solution because we use it to test for starch. And then the Benedict solution, that's out because it's used to test for reducing sugars. 8. Which of the following vitamins can be produced by the skin as well as obtained from food? So we have vitamin A for A, B vitamin B, C vitamin C, and D vitamin D. So the best option here would have been D vitamin D. So vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin that is responsible for increasing the intestinal absorption of calcium, magnesium, and phosphate. Vitamin D is also called the sunshine vitamin because we can make it in the skin in response to sunlight. All right, so that's why it's D, because it is produced by the skin, hence it's named the sunshine vitamin. So moving on to question 9. Item 9 refers to the following diagram, which shows a structure of a typical tooth. So which of the parts labeled A, B, C, or D supplies the tooth with food? So now we have A. A is the enamel, which is the hard exterior. So I'll put E for enamel. And then B is the dentine, which is the second layer. It has a bone-like structure. Then C right here is the pulp cavity. So I'm gonna put PC, pulp cavity, and it consists of living cells. It also has some of our nerves. And then D right here would be the cement. So this part that is not labeled would be some of the fibers that is in our gum, because right here would have been the gum. This next part would be the gum. So G for gum. And then right down here would be the fiber, so I'll put F for fiber. So now the question 9. Which of the parts labeled A, B, or C supplies the tooth with food? So if it's talking about supply the tooth with food, we have to talk about the part that have the nerves, or rather the blood vessels. So the part that has the blood vessels are this, the PC, the pulp cavity. So the answer for that one is C. So question 10. Which of the following teeth aid in grinding food into smaller pieces? So if you're thinking about grinding, so grinding food has to deal with the teeth that are in the back of the mouth. And those teeth that are in the back of the mouth are the molars and the premolars. So we have A, incisors and premolars, that's out, because we only have one there. Then B, molars and premolars. We don't really have to go any further because that is the answer. These are the teeth that are in the back of the mouth. So C, incisors and canines, definitely no. These are found in the front. Then D, canines and molar, we only have one. So the best option would have definitely been B. Next question. 11. Which of the following graphs best represents the effect of pH on the activity of the enzyme salivary amylase in the digestive process? So we have to remember that salivary amylase is a basic enzyme. So it's a base, all right? And it normally have the pH around of about 7 to 8. So it's basic normally. It's pH. So it works best, rather, that I should have said that. So salivary amylase works best around 7 to 8 pH. All right. So that would have been roughly its optimum temperature, somewhere there. So if we're looking at the diagram, so we have rates of reaction of enzyme activity, and then we have pH at the bottom. So now we're looking at A. So we're trying to find what salivary amylase in the digestive system. So this where it would have been where the optimum pH is. Oops. You know, my line is not that straight, but it's 7, roughly there. And that's the range in which we should expect salivary amylase to work best, because that's its optimum pH. That's the pH that it works best in. So this one is looking good. So this one now, we have a small peak here at around 5 to 6. That's still acidic. So this won't be an action of salivary amylase. And then let us see where the peak is, between 7 to 8. But because it has a peak here where it's acidic, it has no acidic function. So C, all right, the peak would be somewhere about 9. So I told you it would work best between 7 to 8. So this one is also out. And then for this one now, all right, it has a peak here. And then one would be here. But the thing is, even though all of this is basic, all of this is alkaline, salivary amylase only work best at 7 to 8. So it won't work best here. So that's out of it. So that's why this one is also out of it. So the best option here would have been A, because it works best between 7 to 8 pH. That's its optimum pH. Moving on. Question 12. Item 12 refers to the following diagram of a part of the human digestive system. So 12. Which sequence correctly matches the number structure to their function? So we have to know the number structure so we can match it to their function. So we have 2 looks like the stomach. So this one is easy to identify, the stomach. Then I is the liver. So I is the liver. And then we have 3. 3 is the small intestine. If we want to be specific, we could say it's the ileum. So small, so SI for small intestine. And then this is a bracket, so I, L, I, U, M. So dot. And then close my bracket. Dash it back. So now we know all these structure. We know that I is the liver. We know that 2 is the stomach. 3 is the small intestine. More specifically, is the ileum. So now we have to know what is produced in the liver, in the stomach, in the ileum. So at the top, at the heading, we have secretes gastric juice. Then the next one is produces bile, absorbs soluble end products. So we have to know which one does this. So the first one secretes gastric juice. We know that the stomach is going to secrete gastric juice, and gastric juice is going to contain HCl, pepsin, and renin. So now the gastric juice would have been 2. So the ones that are corresponding with 2 is C and D. Then the next one is produces bile. So we have to know, is it the small intestine that's going to produce bile, or is it the liver? So now bile is made in the liver. So that means that the liver is going to produce it, and then it's going to be stored in the gallbladder. So we know that I produces bile. So the answer is looking like C, because I is producing bile. And then the small intestine will definitely have to absorb soluble end products. So that's 3, so that's C. And this is how we got the answer. 13. The process by which undigested food is eliminated from the body is called, so we have A, egestion, B, excretion, C, ingestion, D, deamination. So the best option here would have definitely been A, egestion, because egestion means the getting rid of undigested food materials. Excretion now would have been the removal of metabolic waste or toxic waste. And then ingestion would be the taking in of food, while deamination would be the removal of an amino group. So it's like we're breaking down protein, removing an amino group. So the answer is definitely A, as I mentioned. Question 14. Amino acids which are produced as a result of digestion are not used. So we have A for growth, B for insulation, C to make carbohydrates, D to repair worn out tissues. So the best possible option for this would have been the amino acids are not used for insulation. Fat is the only macromolecules that is used for insulation, so that's why that would have been out. So amino acids are used for growth, that's one of their major functions. They are also used to repair tissues, so growth and repair, that's their major functions. Amino acids can also make carbohydrates, so amino acids can be converted to glucose, hence they will make glucose, which is a simple carbohydrate. But for insulation now, only fats are used for insulation. Amino acids can be converted to fat, but it's still the fat that is going to be used for insulation. The amino acids itself cannot be used for insulation, hence B is out of it. But the amino acids itself can be used to make carbohydrates, example glucose, and this also happens in the body. 15. Item 15 refers to the following table, which shows the functions of some structures of respiratory system. So we have I, filters warm and moisten air. 2, prevents food from entering the trachea. 3, provides a passage to each lung. Then IV produces sound with the voice box or the vocal cord. So now we're trying to figure out which structure of the respiratory system is going to do that. So now, filters and moisten warm air. The only thing in the nasal passage that's going to filter and moisten the warm air has to be the nasal passage, the nose, the nostrils. So the nasal passage will do that. So now we know that that is the nasal passage. Prevents food from entering the trachea. That's going to be the epiglottis, because it's the little flap that is found at the top of the trachea, so it's going to prevent the food from going down into the trachea. So we have to look for I being the nasal passage. So the only one that has I as the nasal passage is C. Then 2 is going to be the epiglottis. Then 3 provides air to each lung, has to be the bronchus, because we have 2 bronchus left and right, so those are going to provide the air to each lung because they're connected to the lungs. And then produces sound with voice box, we have to say that is the larynx, so it's definitely C. So guys, you have to know the structures that are in the respiratory system and their function. 16. During a sprint, muscles in the human body produce lactic acid by the process of, so we have A, excretion, B, digestion, C, aerobic respiration, D, anaerobic respiration. So excretion is definitely out, because we know by now that excretion is the removal of metabolic waste. Digestion is breaking down those complex food molecules into smaller subunits or smaller molecules. Aerobic respiration now is the process by which energy is produced whenever glucose is broken down, utilizing oxygen. We get carbon dioxide, water, and a lot of energy. So the answer has to be anaerobic respiration, because in anaerobic respiration, it's the only way we get some lactic acid. So the same glucose that we have there is going to be partially converted into lactic acid, and we're going to get a small amount of energy being produced. So anaerobic respiration happens in the muscle during hard exercise. So whenever you're exercising vigorously. So the glucose is not completely broken down. So less energy is released than in aerobic respiration. There is a build-up of lactic acid in the muscle during vigorous exercise. So that's how we get the lactic acid. And to get rid of that lactic acid, now we have to take in a lot of oxygen. So once we have a build-up of lactic acid, we'll have something called the oxygen debt. And to pay back this debt, or to get rid of this debt, we have to take in a lot of oxygen, which would cancel out the debt. So in anaerobic respiration, we get lactic acid being produced. So we have two types of anaerobic respiration. We have one that is going to give us lactic acid as one of the products, and then another one which is going to give us ethanol as one of the products. So now whenever anaerobic respiration happens in yeast cells, which is also called fermentation, we get the same glucose that is going to be converted without the presence of oxygen, because it's anaerobic, means that it doesn't need any oxygen, to give us ethanol, carbon dioxide, and also little energy. So whenever anaerobic respiration happens in muscle cell, we get lactic acid being produced. So the same thing. So we have glucose being converted to lactic acid, and we also get little energy. Question 17. To deliver mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, the following steps should be taken. So we have I, press the head back with one hand and push the jaw upwards with the other. Then we have 2, pinch the nose and seal your mouth with the casualty's mouth. 3, give 4 quick blows into the casualty's mouth and repeat every 5 seconds. Then 4, place the casualty on their back. So with a question like this, we have to know what will come first. So the correct order in which these steps should be taken is, so the first thing based on what I read that we have to do is we have to do IV. And the only one that starts with IV here is D. So we have to put the casualty on their back. Have to place them firmly on their back. So I have to put them there. So the next thing that we would do once they're on their back now is we're going to press their head back with one hand and push the jaw upward with the other. After we do that, the next thing is we're going to pinch their nose and seal your mouth over the casualty's mouth. And then the last thing that we're going to do is give 4 quick blows into the casualty's mouth. And there you have it. That's mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Question 18. Items 18 refers to the following graph. Which of the following can be deduced from the graph? So we have a graph, so we have risk of lung cancer, and then we have number of cigarette smoke per day. As you can see, there is just an increased, so the line is just going up, so it's increasing. So the number of cigarette smoke per day is increasing, and also the risk of getting lung cancer is also increasing. So we have to find one of the solutions or one of the options saying what we just said. So both of them increasing. So we have A, as the number of cigarette smoke per day increases, the risk of getting lung cancer increases. So A looks like it just said whatever we just said. As the number of cigarettes increase, the risk of getting cancer increases. So B, as the number of cigarette smoke per day increases, the risk of getting lung cancer decreases. No, this is an increasing graph. So B is out of it. C, when 30 cigarettes are smoked per day, the risk of lung cancer increases 10 times. So this one is definitely wrong because they did not give us that information. They did not tell us that 30 cigarettes are being smoked each day. So that's out of it. So D, as the number of cigarettes smoked per day decreases, the risk of getting lung cancer increases. So as you can see, the number of cigarettes smoked per day did not decrease. So that's why A would have been the best option. Both of them, the risk of getting cancer increases, And then the number of cigarettes that is going to be smoked per day also increases. So we're at number 19. 19. Item 19 refers to the following diagram of a vertical section through a human heart. Which of the following paths is taken by the blood leaving the right ventricle? So they already labeled the right ventricle for us. Let me just get rid of this line. So the right ventricle is already labeled for us, which is this part. So we have to know the part that is going to be taken by the blood that is going to leave the right ventricle. So I have red. So this is the part that they have already showed us via the arrow. So we're in the right ventricle. It's going to travel right here. Then it's going to leave to go to the lungs. Once it's in the lungs, it's going to come back this way. And then it's going to go out again. So now we'd have the right ventricle, the pulmonary artery. So from the pulmonary artery to the lungs, enters back through the pulmonary vein into the left atrium, from the left atrium to the left ventricle, from the left ventricle to the aorta. So 2 is the aorta. 3 is the pulmonary vein. So PV. 4 is the left ventricle, so LV. And then we did 2 already, which is the aorta. And I here is the pulmonary artery, so it's PA. So the direction of travel, switch the ink. So the direction of travel would definitely be from right ventricle to the PA, which is the pulmonary artery. So that's 1. So from 1, after 1, it goes to the lungs. From the lungs, it enters through 3, which is the pulmonary vein. So then 3, so it's 1, then 3. So it looks like B. Once it goes to 3, it's going to enter into the the left atrium, from the left atrium into the left ventricle, so it's 4. So from 3 to 4, and then from 4 it's going to go into the aorta, which is 2. So that's why the answer is B. And 20. Capillaries have very thin walls which have only one layer of cells. This is to allow, so we have A, rapid diffusion of gases and glucose, B, slow diffusion of gases and glucose, C, rapid diffusion of proteins and fats, and D, slow diffusion of proteins and fats. So the answer has to be A, rapid diffusion of gases and glucose. So this is because capillaries cannot allow, they do not diffuse larger molecules, large macromolecules like protein. So they do not allow the diffusion of large molecules. So that's why all of the ones that have proteins and fats are out of it, because they're large macromolecules. So glucose is one of the first form carbohydrates. So it's not a large macromolecule because it's carbohydrate that is broken down into one of its simplest form. So that's why the answer is A. 21. Item 21 refers to the following incomplete table, which shows blood vessels supplying some organs. So we have vessels supplying, and then we have organ in the other table. So we have the organ lung, and that's for I. And then we have hepatic for 2, hepatic artery. So we need to know the organ that's going to supply the hepatic artery, or the organ the hepatic artery is going to supply to. And then 3, then we have intestine, which is the organ. And then renal artery, and we have to figure out which organ the renal artery is going to supply to. So now, which of the following correctly labels I, 2, 3, and 4? So we have to know what is missing. So we have to fill in the blank. So 2 of the easiest ones to identify would be 2, and 4. So 2, because they're talking about hepatic, 2 has to be the liver. So liver, E, well, I'm trying to make an E, R, so liver. And then for 4, because they're talking about renal, it has to be the kidney. So these are some context. So renal, kidney, liver is for the hepatic. Cardio, if heart was there, would have been for heart. So now we know that 2 is liver and 4 is the kidney. Let me make a D and then I. So 4 is the kidney. So let us look. 2. So 2, we're saying it's the liver, all right? And then 4 is the kidney. So our choices are between B and D. So now we want to know what vessel is going to supply the lung, and then we want to also know which vessel is going to supply the intestine. So the vessel that is going to supply the lung has to be the pulmonary artery. So remember, when blood leaves the heart, it leaves through the pulmonary artery and goes to the lung. So that's why B would have been the best choice, because I has been the pulmonary artery, and then the intestine will have the mesenteric artery supplying it. So the answer is definitely B. Question 22. Coronary thrombosis occurs when, so we have A, the valves in the heart stop working, B, the coronary vein becomes blocked with a blood clot, C, a coronary artery becomes blocked with a blood clot, D, there is too much blood flowing through the heart. So the best option here would have been A, a coronary artery become blocked with a blood clot. So remember, coronary has to do with the heart, and thrombosis have to do with blood clot. So coronary thrombosis would be the formation of blood clots inside the blood vessels of the heart. So this blood clot may restrict blood flow within the heart, leading the heart tissue to damage or a myocardial infarction, also known as a heart attack, to happen. So coronary thrombosis happens when the coronary artery becomes obstructed, and it's going to hinder the flow of blood. So it's going to stop blood from flowing. That's why we end up with the blood clot. So that's why I chose this answer. The coronary artery becomes blocked with a blood clot, and that is going to cause coronary thrombosis. Question 23. Which of the following vitamins assist in the process of blood clotting? So we have vitamin A, which is A, B, vitamin B, C, vitamin D, and D, vitamin K. So vitamin A is going to help to give us good vision and also healthy skin. Vitamin B is going to aid in respiration. Vitamin D is going to help in the formation of bones and teeth. It is also going to help aid in the absorption of calcium and phosphorus that is in the ileum. And then vitamin K is definitely going to help us in blood clotting. That's the function. It aids in blood clotting. 24. Items 24 refers to the following diagram of the parts of a human skeleton. So we have there. So 24, which of the following combinations correctly identify the bone labeled X, Y, and Z? So we have to know what X, Y, and Z is. So if we look at X, we can identify that X is the femur, Y is the bigger bone, so Y is the tibia, and then Z is the smaller bone, so Z is the fibula, so fibula. So X is femur, so X is femur, so B and D, and then Y is the tibia, So B, and then Z is the fibula. So the answer is B. Question 25. Which of the following diagrams represents the pelvic girdle? So we're trying to find the pelvic girdle. So A is definitely not the pelvic girdle. B is the pelvic girdle. And then C is a vertebrae. D is the sacrum, so D is out of it. So we know it's B, so 26. Items 26 refers to the following diagram of a human arm. Which of the following occurs when the arm is bent or flexed? So we have A, the bicep pulls on the radius. B, the tricep pulls on the ulna. C, the scapula is pulled down. D, the triceps shorten. So whenever the arm is bent or flexed, the tricep is going to relax. And then the bicep is going to contract. So the fact that the biceps here are going to contract, that means that they're going to get shorter, they're going to tighten. And if they're going to get shorter and tighten, then guess what? They're going to pull on the radius. So that's why the answer is A, because the biceps is going to pull on the radius. 27. Which group best represents the location of the ball and socket, hinge, and fixed joint? So we're trying to find where we can find a ball and socket, hinge, and also fixed joint. So we're trying to find which group represent them a little bit better. So now, so for our ball and socket, we can find our ball and socket joints in the arm at the shoulder, where it can move in all directions. So in the arm at the shoulder, so the ball and socket would be at the shoulder. The only one that has it at the shoulder is C. So our hinge joint, we find our hinge joint in the elbow, the knee, and the finger joint. So the elbow, the knee, and the finger. So that's why we have elbow here. So that's good. And then our fixed joint, these joints, the fixed one, they don't move as the name suggests. And we find them rather in the skull. So we have some more joints. So the answer is definitely C. So just some knowledge. So the hinge joints, they're going to allow movements in one plane, only such as the movement when a door opens. It's going to move in one plane. Example, the elbow, the knee, and the finger joints. A pivot joint, which I told you we have some other, so it's going to allow rotation. The atlas with the skull attached pivots on the axis so that the head can turn. So we have the radius pivots at the elbow and allow you to turn your hand up and down. So that's a pivot joint. So the ball and socket now allow universal movement in all plane. Example, the arm at the shoulder moves in all direction within a circle. And then we have another one called gliding joints. So they're going to exist between the wrist and the bone, where one bone is going to slide slightly over the flat surface of the other. That's why they're gliding. Gliding joints also exist between vertebrae. These are not synovial joints, but do have cartilage. So now fixed joints, they do not allow any movement, as I mentioned before. So they are fixed. Example, the sutures between the bone and the skull, and they do not have synovial joints. So remember, the synovial joint is going to prevent friction. So while the gliding joints have cartilage, the fixed one don't have any cartilage. And remember, the cartilage will be a shock absorber. So I think I mentioned the gliding joints as do not have cartilage. So that's the correction. The gliding joints actually have cartilage. So sorry about that. So now we know the answer. We know some extra joints. We know examples. So we should have been good. We're moving on to question 28, 29, and 30. So items 28 to 29 refers to the following simplified diagram of a kidney tubule. So it's a really simple diagram of a kidney tubule. So now in answering question 28 to 29, each labeled part may be used once or more than once or not at all. So 28, which labeled part collects filtrate from the glomerulus? So the glomerulus would have been in here where we have the network of capillaries. So we'd have D being the efferent, so EF, so the efferent arteriole, while A being the afferent arteriole, so A, afferent. B is gonna be the Bowman's capsule. So Bowman's capsule. And then C is gonna be the proximal convoluted tubule. So now the part that is gonna collect the filtrate is definitely gonna be B, the Bowman's capsule. So which labeled parts brings food to the glomerulus? So the part that is going to bring food to the glomerulus is going to be A, the afferent arteriole. The bigger one is going to bring food into the glomerulus. Question 30. Which of the following occurs when blood sugar levels rise above normal? So we have A, adrenaline secretion is increased. B, adrenaline secretion is inhibited. C, insulin secretion is inhibited. D, insulin secretion is increased. So adrenaline would have been out of it because adrenaline is the flight, fright, or fright hormone. So it's the flight, fright, or fight hormone. So it is released in large amounts whenever a person is frightened, excited, or anxious. Adrenaline speeds up metabolism, mainly respiration, by increasing the blood sugar level. It speeds up the heartbeat, the breathing rate, the blood supply to the muscle, and it also gives a feeling of fear. So adrenaline here can actually raise the blood sugar level, but adrenaline is not produced whenever the blood sugar level rises. Insulin is. So whenever the blood sugar level rises above normal, the hormone insulin is secreted. So the secretion of insulin increases, and that's why it's D. So insulin would have been found in the glands of the islet of Langerhans in the pancreas. So it is going to be released when blood sugar level rises, and it's going to stimulate the liver and the muscle cells to convert glucose to glycogen. And then it's also going to stimulate the body cells to absorb glucose for respiration. So that's why insulin here would have been produced. So the question, which of the following occurs when blood sugar level rises above normal? Once the blood sugar level is rising above normal, then insulin will be produced. Adrenaline now can help the blood sugar level to rise above normal. So whenever the person is frightened, excited, or anxious and adrenaline is produced, it can help to spike the blood sugar level. But once the blood sugar level rises, insulin will be produced to bring it back to normal. And that is by converting the excess glucose into glycogen. So guys, we're once again at the end of another video. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Also, turn on your notifications so you know whenever we post a video. See you next time when we do the part 2 of the HSB 2017 CXC past paper.